Oh shit, I forgot my headband. Here, let me go grab it. Oh well. When you only got one in the house.
It's kind of one of those days. I had my contacts in and my eyes were killing me. So I got the weird lighting. Sorry about that. But the
Oh
lighting
no.
in my apartment is not good.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, I think it has been a weird couple days. So today's Monday. Yeah, so yesterday, I don't know. All this weird stuff was happening. I did what, a couple of shows, two or three shows, and God, my modem, my mini modem,
Hmm.
went out and started pulling like 2G, and then my screen kept going black, like just for no reason. And then there was a
Hmm.
couple other things happen, and then I jumped on Facebook, and the first thing I saw, somebody put up like Pat Donworth or one of those people that follow everything, like
Hmm.
this the solar stuff. Um,
Oh,
they were saying that something huge came in like 2 hours before, and then I saw
God.
another one, and then I saw another one. I thought, oh shit. And so, yeah, that's how it was for me. And then I think I picked up on more of that energy today. Not with myself, I don't think. Although I did wake up like at 4, but I went to bed early, and then I worked for about 5 hours, and I went back to sleep. Then I took a shower to try to wake up. Yeah, so yeah, it's good to have you back on. Um,
Thanks.
I know that yeah, you're putting out a lot of work, and it's really good. I like it. I told you. And one of the things that you really seem to have a beat on is because everybody has their own way of explaining things. Some people I talk to, like my friend in Sedona, Steve, he never talks in terms of masculine and feminine,
Mm.
but he's very connected. You know, like Franco. Like Franco didn't talk a lot about masculine and feminine, but you seem to have a beat on it. And I was just wondering from like the clients you have and just what you're picking up, through your own intel. Um, how do you feel that that's going? Do you feel like that the are we getting to a point where the residual of the experiences and the incarnations and the roles and all that uh, is starting to be out of context?
Yeah, it feels like there's like a huge shift going with it. I actually just had a conversation with a friend this morning. It's like you explore those dynamics to a point, and then it's almost like not that there's not relevance to it,
Right.
but if we keep expanding and growing, um, is it relevant anymore? It is and it isn't. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does because I was getting something like what happens to us. Okay, so there are certain things that we know are our identities, or that we have thought were, or that are obvious. Like I'm a father, and I do a talk show, and these certain things, right?
Mhm.
And some of those things we like to do, you know,
Mhm.
and you think of it. Okay, well, I know that that's part of my identity. Do I have to let that go? You have that little cakewalk kind of thing. But then there's the
Yeah.
other side of it, and this is why I was kind of connecting it to what you were talking about, because I started to realize that it's the identities that I didn't know I had, that come in this expanded awareness, and then those are the ones that we're attached to, but via our resistance to being it, right? So I think a lot of that comes up in the masculine and feminine, and so I start looking at, well, many times you've been a narcissist, many times energetically you've been a victimizer, many
Mhm.
times you projected, and some of the basic ones, but I think a lot of it revolves around, and I'm not talking romantically, I'm talking about just in general, You
Hmm.
dress a certain way, you carry a purse, I carry a wallet. You know, I mean, there's just it's so imprinted, masculine, feminine, throughout everything. So yeah,
Right.
it you know
One of
it's
the things,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say yeah. So to your thing about it is, but it isn't. It's true. It's like it isn't. Nothing qualifies behaving in the old pattern, yet the context has changed because it's actually great wisdom. I
Right.
think what you're.
Sometimes I guess what I find with myself is there's not really a right or a wrong way. Even the things that we were programmed with, right? It doesn't mean that some of it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, right? To a degree. What I think is, for me, what it comes down to is the programming, right? Around it. So if we check in with something and we release the programming and let the programming go, and it still resonates with us truly in our heart and soul,
Right.
then it's really in alignment, right? So I've kind of gone on this exploration with things, especially over the last couple of years, of really checking in with Danielle around what's truly in alignment with me, right? Like, and I take out the parts that don't work, and I'm okay with letting myself bring back the pieces that do work for me being a human being on this planet right now. So like I'm okay carrying a purse cuz that's functional and it works for me, right? um kind of things. So it's like, but yeah, I find the biggest thing that I'm sitting with is really, yeah, is this thing that I was told is what I should do, does it actually support me as a being? And if it does, I'm okay with that. But yeah, it just really comes down to, I think, us each individually checking in with what feels right to us truly, not
Yeah.
what we were told to do or not do.
Yeah. We can't cater to. We can't cater to either gender, whether it be catering to ourselves and then therefore sending that frequency out to others, or vice versa, catering to the other. You know, it has to be in balance. So I think going back to what you said about it doesn't have that context, but it still does. Everything's having a new definition, and I think and I'll just speak from a male's perspective.
Hmm.
Is the way I'm understanding this ascension, personal ascension, uh, and being that I'm incarnated in a male body with whatever I have from there, from the previous. I feel like that what it was to be a male isn't what it is to be a male today. If I adhere to my convictions and what my knowing, um, and I would say I would say being a masculine before isn't what being a divine masculine is, which is say what someone like me striving for. I would use the word male or man
Right.
because it's still 100% physical, and it seems like it's going to be that way for a while. I don't know, but yeah. So it's like I can't fall back on the old patterns of
Hmm.
engagement, um,
Yes,
and I
I
don't
get that.
really know perfectly what the new rules are. But I think the rule number one is what you said: to thine own self be true, like
Right.
that overall, and
I
to allow others to do that.
Right. I think for me, well, actually, I know for me how I feel is I want to be my full creator being, right? Which I guess when we look at the creative essences that we have on our planet, right? Masculine and feminine, it takes a woman and a man to create a child.
Yeah.
So that's why I speak in those terms, right? But those essences are within me when I'm thinking about creating like a business creation, right? It takes my masculine and feminine energies internally to bring that to fruition in the physical form. And so I want to be able to do those types of things. I want to be able to create the life that I want and not be limited by a role as a just a feminine or just a woman, right? I want to be a full creator being, but I also want to be a woman, right?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like I want to just be able to be all of who I am and not limited in the old ideas where a woman has certain roles and a man has certain roles, and we're like pigeonholed into those. Now, I honor and respect that there's those roles, but if I'm good or you're good at other things, why not be able to be all of that, right?
Hmm.
And then, still be in my feminine energy as a woman, because ultimately that's it. I just don't want to be limited by those old roles anymore.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to for me.
Well, I think you hit it on the head because regardless of what gender you are, is what you're saying. Uh, to be able, well, and that is sacred union within, right? I mean, a balance, masculine, feminine. That is whatever you want to call it, 0 point peace, whatever. But that in the incarnation that you have and how you feel, it's there. There is a very powerful thing uh, to you fulfilling that and embodying the feminine, right? In the
Hmm.
flesh, and me a masculine, and I
Yes.
think that whole dino self be true is a big part of that, and maybe we've had some fuckery going on here for the last 2 days during this weird period. We've been getting suppressed weirdly, like just
Hmm.
weirdly, so many different things. That's one thing I forgot to mention. But um, God, I forgot. Oh, I was going to say maybe, and I'm not throwing anything out there, and I'm not saying it's a gospel at all. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe that's why there's a lot of propaganda on gender identification. Just
Hmm.
as there obviously has been massive focus on distorting sexuality. Maybe as people are getting to the point where we're getting to, as you explained, that's not something, that's alignment, and that's not something that's being encouraged by those that have been, you know, distorting things.
Right. It's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about how, like, as a soul, like, we're born and we just know, like, if you think about a little kid, right? They just experience their emotions, they move through it. It's not a big deal. They can be mad at you, throw a temper tantrum, and 3 minutes later, they're ready to play and they love you.
Mm-hmm.
And they just feel that full expression of who they are. Nothing is suppressed in their system, at least, maybe underlying, but at that point, they're still being just who they are. And then, as we're taught to suppress who we are, suppress our emotions, suppress what we think, suppress what we feel, suppress who we are, it creates all those inversions, right, within our systems. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes from, because if we were just allowed to be who we were from the beginning, emotionally or expressively, and that was encouraged, I think we wouldn't have so much confusion. Um, we would be able to just be who we were without it needing to be right or wrong and labeled in any of those ways. But I mean, yes, be respectful of everyone around you, but at the same time, like, if you're just experiencing emotions and you're not hurting anyone, well, what's wrong with that? I don't
Exactly.
know.
No, no, exactly. I mean, well, yeah, this whole art of non-projecting is coming online. That's part of the
Hmm.
mastery is to be on top of ourselves and know when we're better off keeping our mouth shut. But I love what you said. It reminded me of this little clip of a video I saw yesterday, and it was this uh, kind of short, heavy set guy,
Hmm.
but like a I don't know how you would say it. Like you could tell he was a really cool dude, just like almost like a Santa Claus. And he was
Hmm.
being interviewed, and it was a clip, and it said, "Yeah, I went back to my reunion, like 30-year reunion or something like that, and there was this guy that used to pick on me because he was gay, and of course, this had been back in like the '70s or something."
Hmm.
And so that I guess that was the point of the clip. And then he said he went up to the guy and said, "You remember me? I was that little guy that didn't know he was gay and trying to find myself, and you picked on me. Now I'm a filthy rich gay guy." And I thought, well, that was him owning his thing. That's why it reminded me when you said it, like
Right.
owning. And I
Right.
think I think that's really important. Really, just before I pass it back to you, but I mean, we got to own it. If you want to be part of something, you got to own it. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, it starts with ourselves. If you want to know who you are, then we know what we got to do. Shadows, fears, but as we start to go out and build, whatever that may be, you got to own it. We've all got to come to work with our lunch belt.
I think an important piece of that is like, regardless of what we've experienced or done or been through in our life, like honoring ourselves through that process and letting it unravel without the shame or feeling bad around it, because we did the best that we could with what we were taught or what we were programmed. And so, like, having grace for ourselves as we unravel out of that, I found for me that was huge for me, learning to be more comfortable in who I was. It was hard for a long time. Um, but once I just started to realize that I didn't have to hold shame if I was actually willing to learn from it, right? Like, if you're willing to learn from whatever you've experienced and grow from it, like, well, that's what the human experience is for. And so, really, like, be proud of yourself for that, regardless of what it was or what you did in the past. It's like, who are you today, and what direction are you heading in?
Yeah. Like, from the human perspective, our lives, well, let's just speak of this life. This lifetime,
Hmm.
we might look at it from the human perspective. I'm talking about just the human perspective. The whole distortion, duality, the judgment. But to look at it from that perspective is one thing. To look at it from the soul perspective, or the galactic perspective, or star family perspective, we're fucking heroes, man. Period. Whatever narrative you want to follow. I mean, if no, and even if no one gave us props, we got to give ourselves props. I think that's what you're saying. Um,
Yeah. I found, while me and you were talking about how I'm pretty just out there on my channel with myself, because I feel like, I don't know, at least for me, there was a time where I was super shy, like crazy shy, and I didn't have confidence in myself because of so many things I experienced. And through like my process, I realized it's so freeing to just be okay with all of those parts of yourself. Like, and I do that so that other people realize that they don't have to be ashamed of not being perfect or having it all figured out, because each day we're waking up and each moment we're just figuring out what's next, especially now that we're creating something totally new. At least in
mhm.
my perspective, I'm here to create something new, not the old loops.
No, I think
you
you're
know.
absolutely right, and I've said this many times on the show that 10 years ago, that was one of the first things I heard is you can't do anything like it used to. Yeah, like that's been done before, because like everybody, I got personal downloads of what I was supposed to do, or you get pieces and they're like, okay, you put the pieces together. Like, well, how do we put the pieces together? That was my famous question back then to the team, and it would always be, you'll figure that out, but you can't do anything um, that's been done before. And as I tried to build things as they'd been done before, it just wouldn't work. It's like the puzzle pieces wouldn't fit, or it was to
Yep.
be a house of cards that would only get like 2 stories high, and then boom, it's gone. And I
Yes.
think that energy was part of our evolution the last 10 years. But I think it's even more. It's even like everything's more enhanced now. So
Yes.
yeah, the whole. But I think what you're saying though, and what you exhibit, and others I've been watching, because I like to pop in on people's stuff, and you can see the trend is the fact that they're doing it. The fact that they're
Hmm.
doing it, and there's more and more people that are doing it every day. I'm not saying everybody needs to go make videos, but it could be posting, it could be sharing images, it could be sharing art or something. But people are coming out.
Hmm. Yeah. With what you just said about like getting those initial downloads and then just kind of seeing where things go, that's actually why I was switching the Facebook around, and I'm actually even just kind of revamping my Harmonious Heart logo and business because I've just grown so much since I created it. I was willing to let the whole thing go. Like a couple weeks ago, I was like, I just had to let it all go energetically, and I was willing to walk away completely if that was what was going to be in my greatest good, you know. But then it was like it was so interesting to experience that because it came back around, but I was guided to actually go back to my original vision where at the time I just didn't have the supports to bring it to life. But now, as I've created those supports internally in me, I quickly manifested the support I needed to bring it to fruition. So it's kind of cool. It felt like almost like the old version was synonymous with the distortion I was still living in. And now that I've like extracted myself out of it, I could bring it back to life
Right.
without the distortion. So that's what I mean by sometimes like if we can let go of what it was so it can become what it is now, it doesn't mean we're necessarily throwing everything out.
Mm.
It just means letting it evolve, which feels really good to me. I've actually learned to enjoy that process because you don't really know what's going to come, but it just feels good to refresh it.
Yeah. Well, it's that same type of initiation of stepping out. Like in your case, like making videos on a very consistent basis, and just doing your thing. In the chart, not in a bad way, obviously, but the charge you get out of it, the lift you get out of it, and I think the same can be said for what you're saying. Um, um, but I think that there's no doubt that like everything's like, and I guess I would just go back to the 22nd November, because it just seemed like we were in this 2.5 month integration. There was just waves of stripping, and it felt very much like the previous 10 years, let's just say. But since then, to me, what you're describing, these detachments, I guess, where we
Mm,
remove something. Um, we've done it a lot now, but the energy in response seems to be a little bit different to me now. It feels like um, letting something go. Um, it, I don't know. You can just, I don't know how to say it. As you let it go, you can see what's staying.
hmm.
You can, in other
Yeah.
words, as more is let go, and that seems to be what all of these waves are to me. They're like, you can say it's a download of this information, but it really boils down to you're letting go. You're letting go of
Hmm.
something that you're not taking with you,
Yes.
and those things uh, are what's different about those things than was before, to me anyway, is that when they come in now, it's a pretty immediate. It's almost like a subtle and immediate uh, landing or embodiment. It doesn't mean that you don't split, because every time, for me anyway, every time I get one of those waves and I've got to let go of something, and it's usually just a belief or a feeling or an old triggered mood or response, or you know what I mean, reaction, but there's still a split. So I
Hmm.
think that's still something that, at least for me, I'm trying to get still trying to get comfortable with. Is these things come in, yeah, they're going faster, it feels better, the momentum feels right, but I still get split, and it could
Oh,
be
yeah.
for 2 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 hours, whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I feel like these last couple weeks, I know we always say this, right? These last couple years have just been constant ramping up, but it's like, holy goodness. Like, I just been, even my schedule with clients and everything's been really quiet. And when that happens, I
Mm.
know I'm being called to go through a big shift and there's something new coming. And it's just been like you're saying, things are coming up in my system, but instead of looking at it like there's something wrong, or I'm just looking at it like the opportunity to expand and move through whatever's coming up. Um, And so, since I've kind of dropped into that way of viewing it more and more, it's intense. But I've kind of wondered, like, is it more intense and is it ramping up because we've prepared ourselves to be able to work at these levels, and we're just like transmuting and moving energy so quickly. Um, Sometimes we can't see what's coming because we're moving it so fast.
I know. I know. I don't know. My personal opinion, I don't know, I would say opinion, hope, desire. I'm going to say opinion, educated opinion. I'm not saying that I'm smart. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to identify where I stand with it. Because it's not like
Hmm.
a hope, wing, and a prayer thing. My feeling
Right.
is that we must have gone through something huge because the
Mhm.
atmosphere post solstice, it's really, really different. Everybody's talking about it in one way or
Yeah.
the other. They're alluding to it. I mean, it's just in the space between the words or whatever, but some people are actually saying it. And the shows, the topics have been, there's been some interesting discussions, revolving around where it could go, teleportation or, instant whatever it is. But
Hmm.
I feel like there's enough individuals that have done enough work, and this is one thing we haven't done is given ourselves enough credit. And I think we've gotten to a point where two things happen. One, as a group or as a subgroup or group, whatever, we said, "Fuck it, I'm tired of this. You know what? We're going to have a voice with the universal community that
Hmm.
we receive advice from or counsel with or whatever. Number one, and number two, we're gonna. This is coming to a head. So
For
so
sure.
I see where the distortion, the script, the movie script could get really loud or louder, although it looks laughable to me today, every day when I take a look at it. Uh, and then our will parallel that in our internal expansion and therefore our external field of influence. So it ought to be
Hmm.
kind of trippy, you know. I've been
Yeah.
I've been saying that for me, I've been seeing the bifurcation in myself, in other people, in almost everything I'm looking at has this obvious yin yang to it, where you can actually see both. You know, you know.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Bronte Sims. Happy birthday, Bronte Sims. I saw it was her birthday,
Oh,
Bronte.
there you go.
So
Cool.
yeah, uh, yeah. So do you like tap in every day, like on an individual basis, or do you? A lot of people I
Yeah.
know just through the day, throughout the day of their, but some
Yeah.
people
It
still,
pretty much just happens. It's
yeah,
been a big part of the energy. I think that is why I'm alone and quiet so much.
yeah,
That's why I said I felt like I knew when it gets quiet like that, I know there's big things happening. It's just getting called into the energetic fields. And um, yeah, actually, I messaged Morgan yesterday because I had a dream that I called her and we were on the phone the night before. And I couldn't remember any of it, but I just messaged her about what I had been experiencing. And we kind of validated for one another that it was similar. Um, so, yeah, there's definitely I agree with you in that kind of like we're done with the old ways. Like definitely concur with that. So what I kind of feel with that in my experience in my field is once it was like almost like before it was like, oh, you just got to hold space to allow everything to have its own experience, right? And then it was almost like the green light came to where it was like, no, you don't have to agree to any more of the shenanigans and the abuse and the drama. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to align with it or agree with it. And in fact, almost each one of us that chooses not to participate in that actually is holding the space for the bigger collective for those to collapse. If that's what I've kind of been shown.
yeah,
And I'm someone who's very surrendered to the higher, higher guidance. And I really check in with things before I,
right.
go full blast into things. And so I was happy to hear that message.
That's a good message, and that's how it feels to me. That's
Yeah.
probably another way to say what I was. Well, and then on the other side of this convergence of, it's weird too. Again, it's paradox. The two earths, or bifurcation, yet there's still this convergence of the two energies. Something's got to give, and maybe that's already happened. Maybe there's just, however that looks, but I definitely feel that, and I said this yesterday. I feel like that there's going to be palpable, hard evidence of the transformation beyond what we can acknowledge, which has mostly been through our stories, that don't perfectly match. I mean, the overall starseed story matches. I woke up, I was awake, I went to sleep, I came back, estranged from family, etc. But things, like somebody was on in the last couple of days, and they were talking about, that was Randy Mahatma Brown. It was pretty lit, to say the least. And he was talking about people being visibly illuminated, something like that. And I've seen a picture from some friends of mine I know very well, who were with some friends of theirs, and they're around a kitchen table, and their friend, one of their friends, it was a couple, was a dude, and he was in total light body. I'm looking at a picture like a Polaroid. I mean, it's like, whoa. So, I mean, things like that start to happen. That 100th monkey thing will jump off the Richter scale. It will. It really will.
It feels like that pocket where you said it's like the bifurcation. I think we're just expanding and shifting at such big levels. It's almost like that I've been saying exponential potential. It's almost like we reach a point where we just have to let it go and let it do what it's going to do, because we can't even, our human self can't even see all the potentials or how what we're doing, the effect that it's actually having.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And so if you look at both ends of it, it's the very subtle things that embed the programming. The subtle things, like, why do I open a door for you every time we go into a restaurant or we go to the car, or why are you dressed the way you are, all the cultural things, right? All the gender-esque type things, if it's that example. So they're very subtle, and they had, just re-impressed, in each one of us. But by the same token, which is your point, we really haven't given ourselves enough credit. And we're getting to a point now where we're really starting to love ourselves way past the bullshit. And a big part of that is because we've been able to admit to ourselves that we don't, in this department or that department. But it's the very subtle things, to your point, that are just as much, if not the most important thing in regard to this is a collective transformation, in the little things that we do, in everything that we do, the integrity of what we do. And it's not bullshit. It actually is it's a powerful thing.
Yeah. Integrity has been a huge word for me, or a point, like when I am checking in with what feels in alignment with me or in integrity with me. And a big point is that I've realized is that's all I really need to know. It's not about what anyone else chooses,
Right.
right? It's like, where am I going to align and put my energy and my focus? That's my integrity. That's what I'm choosing to use my life force for. In these last couple years, I've become very, very aware and responsible for what I put my energy and essence into, because realizing how much and how many places I was actually giving my power and my life force away to,
Yeah.
in retrospect, is literally astounding to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not self-betraying anymore for anybody.
No. No, and I think too, in the last couple of years, we've made a lot of progress since that whole COVID thing.
Yes.
So it's becoming less personal. We used to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Oh, this person did that to me, or they represented something that was was encroachment upon your boundaries. You go to set new
Right.
boundaries, this person's out altogether.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot of reconnects, right? So,
Yes.
but now if we go through that type of spontaneous transformation, uh, what ends up happening is we don't. I think there's less and less throwing the baby out with the bathwater now. It's more like, hey, this is where I stand, and thanks for listening and or whatever, and it's there's not that disconnect that we were having, which
Yeah. I agree with you. I found it does go back to that self love thing, right? Because I found I'm having boundaries for myself, but all the things were just mirroring to me the parts where I didn't love myself. And as I'm shoring those up, my energetic boundaries are kind of just taking care of all of that for me. And to your point, like we're all going through a transformation. So one of the messages that came through the other day was to just let go of the version you held of that person in your mind and allow them to rise up to who they actually are, because hold the same grace for them that we're learning to hold for ourselves, because
right,
we're all going through a lot.
yeah,
And like to hold a person or a gender or a collective in a spot or in pigeonholing them into a certain role or a certain category, or they do this or they do that, really is only limiting ourself at the end of the day, because
yeah.
then we're just creating more of that limitation. But if we just learn to have grace with ourselves and love ourselves, then we can automatically start to hold that space for others. And I feel like that key piece right there,
Hmm.
that's how you change planets
Well,
from war to love.
yeah, and I think that's a great. That's first of all, it's a great exercise. I would say exercise. It's more like an actionable mantra to me. Like, but it's these little things. They're like affirmations in motion, right? Where you're actually doing something. Where you're actually involving the body. So what I love about what you're talking about is we can only do we can only love the universe as much as we love ourselves, no matter how much we want to bullshit
Mhm.
ourselves. Okay, period.
Right.
So the from the codependent paradigm that we're coming from, uh, we we instead of because we were either unconscious of it in ourselves or conscious and didn't want to look at it. So what do? We project it on somebody else. So we're now
Mhm.
rating the universe at that level. Oh, the universe is an 8.5 because it's 1.5 asshole represented by this person. But it's really me, right? And so it's an
Right.
unconscious thing. And so it just kind of like hits a dead end. But what you're doing is replacing it. Like there's an old
Mhm.
saying, if you want to like quit something, like an addiction, or you replace a bad habit with a good habit. So
Mhm.
you're now consciously uh, looking at that person or allowing that person or giving that person what you've learned to give for yourself. And
Mhm.
and again, it's the subtle imprints that thread this new grid. It's
Mhm.
not what you know or what you can say or what you've heard or what you've read. It's what you
Mhm.
do. And that integrity thing is, I think for me it's integrity, intention, and will.
Mhm.
Okay, because will, free will, universal will, intention is everything, but the
Mhm.
integrity, for like the best word we can find, right? Um, because look, everyone's talking about deaths. I feel like I'm dying. I feel like I'm dying. You know,
Mhm.
and it's even gotten louder in these last few weeks. But what's dying? What's dying but those things that we don't want the world to know of ourselves?
Mhm.
Ultimately, we might say it's, oh, I'm rich, and no, that's not it. What's underneath that? Oh, I'm afraid to be poor, or I was, you know what I mean. So it's the deaths are coming from those things we don't want others to know. This is why transparency is so important. This is why you can have
Mhm.
a 24-year-old girl come on here a few days ago and talk about some really deep stuff. That's a very fine line in the old paradigm because of all those toes you might step on. But it wasn't the content of the story, it was the openness and transparency of the heart,
Hmm.
that's coming online,
Yeah.
which is why we got to go mainstream and get everybody's work out there.
Right? Definitely. I a couple thoughts came to my mind when you were talking, but I don't know. That one that part where like you I think it's for me this like the last year was really about boundaries for myself, but it was just because I had in the past a tendency to like way overgive and put myself on the back burner. And through learning how to work with my energies, it's like learning that self-love and love for the other person. And so as I process those things, what I found is like, let's say there's something happening that I don't like or that feels disrespectful to me. um I'll let the person or the place or the thing know, and I'll set that energetic boundary for myself, but then I let it go right then and there. It's almost like energetically, I drop it into my energetic field and then just allow the person or the place or thing to choose what they want to do with it.
Mm,
But what I'm finding is, like you said, it's not that they're bad or whatever. They were just showing me where I still wasn't loving that part of myself.
mm-hmm.
So once I do, either they meet me in that new loving state, or they end up leaving my space, but not because I kicked them out.
Right. And again, it's nothing's. I mean, it doesn't mean the circles won't collide again.
Right,
Or come
exactly.
together again. And
Exactly.
and and I think
Yeah.
this is a good too. This is a good segue. Um, so I think that obviously, okay. First of all, it's very obvious. The incarnated woman has led the charge. 80-20 probably today, still 80-20. Um, Everyone in these communities was born with the empath quotient on. The heart was open, however you want to put it. They overgave. They were, doormats. Everyone, like what you're talking about, the liberation that you're going through this past year, how you did it, putting up boundaries, learning about yourself, and etc. Obviously, the lion's share of that we've been exposed to has been the women, because you hear that
Hmm.
a lot. In a lot of the narratives or commentary would talk about, I'm not doing this for men anymore, and it wasn't a bad thing. They was just describing their evolution. But what
Hmm.
we haven't heard the men. Okay, we haven't heard the men talk about the boundaries that they need to put up so
Hmm.
they can figure out who the fuck they are.
Thousand
Who,
percent.
right? And so I'm just doing this in the moment because I know something's cooking, because it's been popping up a little bit the last few days. That uh, it's something I think that we're going to see, and that I think we can, because of the experience of the woman of the last 10 years, we can probably step up quicker and support it, because I think once it starts, it'll be like an avalanche. Uh,
Hmm.
because one, y'all led the charge. Two, you're already the gender that carries the connection. So obviously that's the heart connection. We were more grounded, lower chakras. So this is going to be, one of those things where you pull the rubber band really far back, but it's going to go really far the other way, right?
Hmm.
And so,
I like that. It's funny because for me, actually growing up, it was my mother, the feminine in my life, who was the one who you know, wouldn't let me actually set healthy boundaries for myself energetically. I guess she was that part of my training. So for me, it was kind of not a masculine or feminine thing. It was just a human thing. But I um I agree with you. I've kind of looked at it from like the broader perspective in terms of the masculines and feminines working together. And like you're saying, in a sense, if the feminines were like leading the charge, but we wouldn't have been able to do it without the mirror of the masculines holding down the fort,
Oh yeah,
and kind of showing us. I guess that's how I've operated within it, how I've looked at it, instead of like that blame game, like I was just saying with everybody else. If they're showing me where I'm not loving myself,
right,
it's not, it was just simply that for me.
right,
Anyway, I mean, showing me, okay, I felt like the energies were working in tandem, actually. That's actually how I've worked my energetic connection with my masculine. Um, Not just me, but like a masculine soul connection that I have. It was showing me exactly that, where to shore up so that I could become the
right.
woman that I want to be. And was some of it, like, technically from the human perspective, hurtful and all of those things? Yeah, it was. But again, that was showing me where I wasn't loving myself.
Right.
But it's also that, in part, that connection with that masculine is why I've had so much exponential growth these last 2 years.
Right.
And if I would have just only looked at it from the old lens, I would have missed the opportunity for the growth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so with you, I agree with you in the sense, because I feel like now, as more of the feminines are stabilizing in the new and more able to process and hold that space, exactly like you said, now the masculines collectively can go through their process. And yeah, I don't know, I feel like that was the teamwork.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that it has. Well, the whole thing operates on that. You know, from
Mhm.
the, let's say, the top of the pyramid as it trickles down, and we
Mhm.
develop these playgrounds or whatever you want to call it. And I think also too that that when the wave began, a big part of the, I will call it the divine feminine message, or the reemergence of the mother goddess, or however you want to put it. You know, I'm going, just say 2012, 13, 14, 15, as this thing was on, that a big part of the information that she was bringing to the table was about sacred union in all its forms, and
Mhm.
the uh, necessity, or reality, or whatever, of the masculine and their role. I just think at this point we've reached a place where there's been a lot of embodiment, and I do think we're going to start to see, uh, and we started to see it last year. We started to see more, like in the second half of the year, more uh, men stepping out. Like I
Mhm.
just got a message from a guy, and I don't know anything about him. I've never seen his name before. His name's, I think, Marco or something like that. He might be from Europe. And so he sends me this message a couple of days ago, and he says to me, and I'm assuming this guy's about 40, 45 maybe, based on whatever I remember looking at. And he says, I've been watching Soulogy for 4 years. Um, he said something else about coming out. People are coming out, and then he said, I watched this young girl on the show a few days ago, and the show immediately after that, and that's what he pulled from it. He said, I feel like, something like, I need to step out now. I want to come on the show. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And obviously the women have been stepping up, and some men. Don't get me wrong, but there's still some adjustment that will show itself, because again, if you look at the talk shows, 90% of them are men. Therefore, and you can't tell me that. Look, you could have. Well, I don't know. I don't want to say anything like that. But anyway, 90% of them are men. So obviously, certain things go with that. So I think we're going to see this transition. But I think, how they say that. What was it like? Like, kind of like what you were talking about. For the feminine to come out, the male had to support, or the masculine energy had to support. And I think it's kind of
Mhm.
flipping. It's kind of flipping. Like now, there's enough stabilization. I think you said this earlier, and
Yeah.
now they can come out and be seen. But I'm not talking about uh, from our wounds. More like what I've experienced with women coming on this show the last 2 or 3 years when they step out, which is just more like, "Hey, here I am."
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think what you said earlier, it's just important for each of us as humans to be able to find out who we actually are. Man, woman, doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, like the programming um, for the masculines was really intense, really intense. Like you said, it was really like a lot of the programming was shut down your heart, deny your heart. You know what I mean? Like that's intense to that's a big inversion from the truth of who a man is.
Yeah.
So, I
And
don't
then
know.
and then
I'm
I mean
happy to
and
hold
then I
space for that.
oh I'm sorry.
You're good.
No, that your voice was still going. Um,
Oh,
well, and I think and we just got to face the music here. We know that our life force energy comes from our root. From the root of the human body, or however you want to put it, the root chakra. And you look at
mhm,
the hold. I mean, I know obviously a lot of people, whatever, over the years, and um, I had my own sexual distortion through my life, and I would say that you know, last 10 years have been very mild, and whatever. So I might have, and I'm a little older than some of these guys, so I have a little different perspective, but not in a shocked way or a stupid way. Uh, the hold that sexual distortion has on the masculine. You can look at porn. You can look at things that happen in the bedroom, or performance, or programming,
mhm,
whatever you want to call it. Um, and I feel like the discussion could get to why. Why does he do those things? Because it's not the same. Obviously, two different journeys, right? Why did he do those things? His heart got shut down. He's still got this energy in him. He's the manifester, the creator, the builder, and that energy got siphoned, just like her energy got siphoned. How do
mhm.
we re-regulate that and take that uh, almost like second nature? This is what a man did to relieve stress. You don't have
Mhm.
sacred sex with your partner to relieve stress. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or to falsely build your image because, oh my God, I took 3 Viagra and I went for 2 hours and she's passed out. So it's like you talk about a death.
Mhm.
Take the man's dick away and what happens to him? I mean, this is I know it's a heavy thing. So I feel like we're about to step into this, and as we saw a lot of women stepping up the last couple of years, I can look at the show as a microcosm. Certainly, the
Mhm.
last year and a half, I think we're going to start to see men stepping forward too, and I think we're going to hear some pretty wild stuff, and I think that's
Yeah.
a good thing.
Right. Definitely. Absolutely. I'm here for that. For sure.
Zach,
I uh I think actually even for me, like as a woman, um this last couple years when everything happened, it really for me was about going in and healing my lower chakras in
yeah,
a lot of a deeper way. Like that's where even within the collective there is a lot of the programming and the old trauma and the old patterns. And as we're just sitting here right now, it's like, well, did the feminines pop out of those to hold the space so we could see the differences? Because if in my younger life, I was definitely just operating from my lower chakras, without a doubt. Like that's how I survived. That's how I operated in my teens and my 20s. And then I started to get on this journey And of course, I wanted to just get up in the higher chakras. I didn't want to deal with all that stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in allowing ourselves to do that, we were able to see some of the other side
Yeah.
and like get into those new ways of being. But then, like I said, for me, I had to go back into those lower chakras and reground and embody my true self into those areas.
Right.
And I maybe that's why I speak so much about my own masculine and feminine energy, because why that experience helped me understand some of what the masculines have gone through. I mean, I'm not a man, so I can't sit here and say I know what it's like for you, but I feel like it gave me some perspective on that I did not have before,
Yeah.
in appreciation for what masculines have gone through and are like working through.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
No, yeah, I mean, I could talk a lot of stories here, but I think overall, like one of the things that's really, kind of been driven home, I think, in the last few weeks, has been the level of the DNA manipulation or programming or whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Because I was talking about this last week on the show, because whoever I was talking to, it was in the context of it, what we were talking about with men coming out. I can remember, or I had these memories in the last couple of weeks of these first sexual uh, interactions, not necessarily petting but just when something went off, the light bulb went off, right? Now I'm
Hmm.
talking like 5 years old. I'm talking like seven
Hmm.
years old. I'm talking like 9 years old. There was some type of instinct that I had. And it's not just me. There's no way. So there's
Hmm.
something, almost like something was shown to us and then a trigger goes off. And that programming, that distorted programming is then activated by
Can
virtue,
I tell
almost
you
like
that's not just
malware.
masculines?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I remember similar things, you know, and if we're not taught what it is or to understand it, like you said, you kind of just go into whatever's in front of you in a way.
It's a if you think about, okay, I'm trying to be no f bombs, but like if you look at the Earth journey, it could be described a lot of ways. But what's the biggest? What is if you broke it down in simple terms? What is the biggest? What's the best description or biggest challenge? Is it's a mind fuck. Okay, everything becomes a dialogue. Everything becomes this back and forth, back and forth. So if you look at the root again, pun intended, uh, like what you're talking about, some of your early and everyone really, something was pre-programmed, and that when people talk about going back to the original blueprint, I think these are the type of things they're talking about neutralizing or releasing or transforming back to the way or
Mhm.
redesigning or whatever. So if you think
Right.
about the whole mindfuck concept or description or challenge, uh, you know, having that happen, and then like so many women, and I'm sure men too, but so many women have reported, and it's certainly true, when they would go to their guardians and say something happened that doesn't feel right, or oh, don't talk about it, don't talk about it. So there was just this constant, it's a bad
Mhm.
thing, whether it was something that you became a victim in or something where you were in love, and whatever, it's just all.
Right. And it's kind of interesting if you think about it, because our sexual energy is our creation energy, is our life force.
Right.
It's like the foundation of who we are. But like you said, we were taught to look at it as distorted. It kind of goes back to when I said about the emotions. It's like we were taught all of these things that are just naturally us, are bad or wrong, instead of actually being shown how to work with them. Um, which to me, when you pan out and look at it, it's like, okay, no wonder why the planet has looked the way that it has, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like everything was inverted, you
Oh
know,
yeah. Yeah.
energetic.
I listened to Lex Friedman a couple days ago. I shared it on my wall. It's a 1 hour podcast. He goes solo, where he's kind of reviewing and commentating on George Orwell's 1984. And
Mm.
I read it a long time ago, and I watched the movie not too long ago. So I'm pretty familiar with it. It was interesting. He's an interesting speaker. Um, and I had forgotten this part, but his synopsis or his take on all of it was that love is all there is. I mean, love is it all goes back to love. And
Hmm.
in the book, which I had forgotten, there's a quote, uh, and the guy says that making love is the greatest act of rebellion. And I've read that before, and I've read the book, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And I started to think about it in the context of the most embodiment, of the most literal, like because we ask ourselves, how much do we have to embody? How literal does this have to get? Do I have to personally detach physically, mentally? What is that? You know what I mean? But if you think about it, one person is a universe. Two, then you have the potential triad. So no matter this is what it meant to me. Like no matter what the how dystopian things are, no matter how whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're in a Holocaust and a nuke went off and you got you've only got hours to live. Two people and it doesn't necessarily have to be obviously you know intimacy by traditional standards, but two people making love is the greatest act of rebellion. And of course, he's speaking in terms of against that which has created a distorted reality.
Hmm. Yes, very good. I feel like that's makes total sense to me. Like when we're talking about the self love and getting into love for ourselves and for others, it's like that really is, I don't know, like as I just feel into it energetically, it's like that does rewrite things in and of itself. Each one of us that's doing that or learning how to do that for ourselves. Um, yeah, I like it. I'm processing a lot from this conversation.
Yeah, this is why I love this job because
Hmm.
it's like it creates new thoughts and
Yes.
but yeah, God, and I just lost it. And you lose them too. You lose your thoughts too.
Yeah,
But yeah, the
I
whole
hear
thing
you.
about the yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So the empaths, and again, I believe that everyone's an empath. That's natural. But there are certain people that came in wide open, just like with other
Hmm.
types of attributes. Um, but I think if you look at all of our stories, the struggles, the suffering, the great moments, they all revolved around this tug of war, this this journey of love,
Hmm.
and there is a certain revolutionary, rebellious piece to it because we always come back. Otherwise, why would we continue to live with a narcissist? Why would we continue to overgive? We wouldn't let go of love, and we won't. And
Right.
uh, and so that's probably not something pre 2012 that was rewarding us too much, but I think it is now. That's how
Yeah,
I feel about it, and not because of
definitely.
just one of us. I mean, obviously,
Right.
there's a whole
Yep,
group of people.
for sure. I think that's like why I've kind of been guided to focus on relationships. Um, it's not all I do, but it's something we can all relate to, you know? It's, and like you said, that want for love, to experience love, to share love. in, partnerships, but just to see and experience more of it within all of our relationships on the planet. Like it's so much more of our true nature. And so it's an interesting experience we've set up for ourselves here.
No kidding. Well, and then of course, like why you said you focus a lot on relationships, because obviously there's other ways to create a trinity or a triad energy, in the flesh, let's just say. but at the core, a relationship between opposite genders, and I'm not saying anything about, I'm talking about energetics, not physical, right? So before anybody
Right.
sends me hate mail, because I'm totally open.
Right.
But that the potential, because it carries from the ethers the into the physical, the attributes, certainly to the energetic etheric body level. Therefore, the whole physical gender goes out the window. But my point
Mhm.
is that potential obviously isn't being created as a one-off. It's
Mhm.
being created to be reseeded through all aspects. It's an energy that we happen to
Mhm.
have one representation of it that's great, whatever, that's of a romantic nature, whatever the case is. Um, and so that's where, you know, I can see, and I think there's a lot of practitioners that dive into what you're talking about as well, and for a reason. For a reason, it's information that more as time goes by, more and more people are going to be plugging into,
Right.
which which is cool, because these solutions, this sacred wisdom that y'all are pulling down, it's very simple. Number one, it's a simple, profound wisdom and practices, and I think as this thing continues to boil over and the distorted side of things, people are going to be like we've been many times, just reach a point where you're like, holy shit, I can't think, I can't wash myself, I can't, and the simplification of lifestyle even is going to be, I
Mhm.
think, very very conducive to rehabbing this planet, if you want to call it
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So you're revamping Harmonious Hearts. Is that what you
Yeah.
said?
Yep. I
Is it
am.
still your YouTube Harmonious Hearts? So
Yeah, that's it. I actually only have one now. I'm just condensing it into one. And,
okay, very
it's
cool.
all been part of my transition. But, yep.
Right
So
on.
just rolling with what feels right. And
Well, man, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great, and I'm seeing a lot of people doing it. I'm slowly getting out there and gathering stuff for the archives. I got more of a download on that today. In fact, I
nice.
told you I woke up at 4. I think it was about 4, and I worked for about 5 hours, and then I went back, laid back down, and I set my alarm, and before, like, it was 45 minutes, and before it went off, like 30 minutes, I got this. When you're in, you're out, and then you're in and out. So I had
Mm-hmm.
come conscious with but still over there, right? So I came conscious, and I heard something about build the biggest archives. Like almost like a build it and they will come thing. Like build the biggest archives. And I thought, wow, that's cool. That would be cool. To have like
Nice.
a super duper living library of all of our everybody's work and everything. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, thanks, Danielle.
Thank you. I
Appreciate it,
appreciate you.
and we'll be back in 52 minutes with Tiny Maldonado. Another.
Nice.
All right. Take care, everybody. Peace out.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye bye.